You know, I had a gut feeling that Tetsuo was going to get the best episode out of the 60s characters back when they were shown in Saitama vs. Popeye, and turns out, yeah, pretty much. It's great to see Akira get the spotlight on Death Battle, since it's a movie I like quite a lot, even if I'm not quite as head over heels in love with it as a lot of people are. Though quite a few people in my friend group do love the movie that much. So much so to where Brandon asked to join me again for this review. And since Jonathan vs. Tanjiro is probably my favourite Death Battle related video on my channel and it was the most fun to write, I was more than happy to have him on again.
Oh, Tetsuo was absolutely who I was the most excited to see come to Death Battle this season. Take my excitement for Tanjiro, and this is tenfold that amount. The episode was going to mean a lot to me no matter how it turned out, purely seeing him on the show. A character I actually researched for another Versus series as a passion project with Max and Ducko. Also, knowing it was being manned by one of our best friends, Mr. They Killed Sonic, DJ Tiki. Hearing he was going to write a full-on Death Battle was really exciting, and he's the only other person I knew to have read the Akira manga. May not be as familiar with this comic incarnation, but any self-respecting Marvel vs. Capcom fan would hold Mr. Curly Mustache in high regard.
I watched Akira back in 2020 and only learned that there was a manga last year, so that should say the extent of how familiar I am with that version of Tetsuo. And I'm not a comics guy, so the most I'd be able to know Magneto from is the movies, though the only stuff I've seen in the X-Men series are Logan and the Deadpool films. So yeah, not exactly a character I've got too much connection to. Still, it's Magneto, probably the most deserving Marvel character to get on who hadn't already. So with both characters being ones I knew but still had a lot to learn about, I was very excited for this one, especially knowing that one of my friends was the head of the writing process. Though, don't get it twisted, I'm not going to gas it up solely because DJ wrote it. That's not going to play a part in how either of us feel about the episode.
It is very Versus community coded to tunnel vision on Death Battle and not separate these things, so that probably did need addressing. Believe it or not, you can be friends with someone in the community and not make your relationship solely about Versus. If you want anything to bully him for, tweet at him that he can't beat the Phantom Express and Cuphead.
If you've seen any of my reviews so far this season, you'll notice that the two episodes I held in the highest regard so far have been the more character-driven ones. Omni-Man vs. Homelander and Tanjiro vs. Jonathan had what I believe to be the best dialogue between the combatants in the fight scenes. Though with those ones, the analyses did have to take a little bit of a hit. All four rundowns were great across the board, but only JoJo didn't have to sacrifice any discussion of crucial plot points and Waze's character change for the sake of avoiding spoilers. Magneto vs. Tetsuo has no such drawback for either of them.
On the Magneto end of things, a lot of references I wanted to see actually made it in. A wooden gun sidebar meme, the analysis preview has Welcome to Die. Honestly, the only thing missing were any blatant Marvel vs. Capcom references. Although I know how polarizing that was in Lex vs. Doom. So maybe this is just another matchup they have to learn. But on the stuff that actually matters, bringing in the political subtext that's riddled throughout the mythos of the X-Men was done really well, especially with the comparisons to MLK and Malcolm X. Not something I ever expected to champion a Death Battle for. I've never understood the idea of dismissing characters solely because they're cape shit. This felt very distinct from the other X-Men and Marvel characters. Crossing my fingers the Nazi imagery doesn't get this episode taken down or deemed ineligible for monetization, nor how graphic the subject matter in Akira can get, which, now I can say, this is my favorite analysis of the season next to Homelander. Magneto's was very good, and maybe it's just character bias, but I loved hearing about Akira. Okay, it's absolutely character bias, but getting both sides of the coin with the manga and movie was great.
I especially love how both versions of the Akira story are discussed, with the manga version being given the primary focus. I liked how they discussed Magneto's powers, the science behind Tetsuo's Big Bang was covered in a far more interesting way than I've seen done anywhere else before, and just generally I like how the powers and the stories of the characters are interwoven in both rundowns. Hell, even in the opening they briefly go over how both had a real-world impact on their respective mediums. That's pretty cool. It's not something that especially needed a deep dive into, it's just cool that it was acknowledged at all.
Both analyses were really engaging, matching and surpassing the bar set by this season. Character study has and always will be more engaging than power study, although if I were to cultivate any criticisms, this weirdly is the only pair of analyses missing any numbers. Not like they needed calcs to get the point across that Magneto outclasses Tetsuo, but they're nice to have. Although I'm realizing now I'm building a reputation on this channel for the guy who bitches and moans about scaling. I'm not that far gone in Neckbeard Versus, I hope.
Yeah, no, even as someone who has that aspect of the show as the lowest priority in terms of what I look for in an episode, it's weird that Omni-Man vs. Homelander got numbers, but this one didn't. Still, it's not like this is Zuko vs. Todoroki where they give both characters almost nothing. You don't need to bust out the calculator to figure out if the power of the sun can match a dent in the moon.
I did like the episode's usage of Dummy more than his last appearance, although I will say I like Tetsuo's cutaway more, just generally preferring the non-slapstick cutaways. Far from bad though. I'm really just digging for things to complain about to not sound biased. God forbid I support a friend of mine and think they did a good job. Maybe we should move on to the fight. I say as if that'll give me more to pick apart, because it's all around just a good time. Again, matching and surpassing most of the season's strengths with its character-driven battle and somber tone.
Speaking of tone, this episode gets that down right out of the gate. Taking place in an apocalyptic city with a really dark and dreary colour palette feels perfectly Akira. I know some people have taken issue with the lack of a real setup, and that wouldn't normally bother me as well, but like, if there's any character this season I can buy seeing someone else floating in the air and picking a fight out of absolutely nowhere, it's Tetsuo. Maybe if Magneto was just standing around then I'd take issue, but the fact that he's flying shows to Tetsuo that he has powers, thus something that the power and respect-hungry Tetsuo can overcome to show that he's top dog. The rest of the start doesn't give me especially much to talk about. I like how fast Tetsuo's burst of speed are conveyed, the hand-drawn Magneto looks great, and generally the sprites and 3D backgrounds look about as good as you'd expect from Death Battle nowadays. At this point it's like complimenting the editing and the analysis, I can only say it looks stellar so many times. But I'm gonna continue to do that anyway. The animation does indeed look stellar.
I may be getting ahead of myself, but for as good as the animation is in terms of action, the draw to this match was always going to be the characters interacting with one another. Surprise, the Marvel Herald beats the guy with a film. I really like the wise demeanor Magneto has, and the impulsive angst Tetsuo brings. Magneto slicing his arm off is a casualty from him flinging a bunch of scrap, but he doesn't actively try and pursue Tetsuo for a kill until he's begged to do so. Oh, and the big thing people wanted was for them to go for a mercy kill, and I think this was done better than Tanjiro vs. Jonathan, because it's Tetsuo reaching out and asking for it to happen. The hand-drawn in this fight also looks great. I was genuinely surprised they pulled off the baby form for Tetsuo, although I do think it looks a little small. The head, I think that's what's bothering me. Not like I can imagine a team of animators replicating the body horror that happens in Akira. But it is still emblematic and just as impactful as when Tetsuo is crying out for Kaneda to help him.
I thought the mercy kill was a semi-original one I had when brainstorming what could happen in the fight, but no, it turns out it's such a widespread common thought that it's the kind of thing you'd expect to see in a Death Battle Hot Takes Twitter thread. Anyway, yeah, this climax and ending has all the positives of the Tanjojo ending for me, but without the weird jarring pacing issues. Though this one doesn't have Benji Buckley screaming his lungs out, so I really could go either way between them. Both even have the loser's final breath be spent thanking their opponent. Though with Tetsuo, it was nice to see him at peace before his body fully shut down. And Magneto doesn't follow up with a quirky one-liner, which was definitely for the better. He may be a Marvel character, but he doesn't need to be spouting Marvel brand humor. It's weird to be discussing the ending this soon into the animation portion of the review, but there we go.
Performances were both great. Tetsuo was played by Joshua Waters, who played Wally West. I really like how he got off the anger of this little fire starter. Luckily, he didn't have an opponent given the worst dialogue in the series. Magneto was voiced by Edward Bosco, former wannabe Thanos and Subway Dragon, and while his performance was good, I think this one line about Tetsuo having a temper tantrum is just really funny, mainly because it is the most Ducko-coded line I have ever seen in a versus match. He does end up fighting a baby, so it fits.
And while we're on the audio side of things, Ego Death is a great track. I'm glad they actually talked about that phrase in Tetsuo's rundown, which might stop as many people from asking what the hell it's even talking about. But regardless, it's a pretty good track for the most part, and then we get into the last act and the music starts complementing everything perfectly. The quieter part of the end fits the somber tone, and the Akira chanting was my one hope for the track, which I'm so glad they included, because it's so fitting for the reveal of the giant hideous baby thing. As for some other general things I thought were really good, I like how Tetsuo shows signs of pain when he's pressing his advantage because his powers strain his body. Him only getting into Magneto's head after the helmet got knocked off was neat. The hand-drawn stuff across the board looks so good, and there's so much of it. I like some of the creative ways Magneto's magnetism's used, like choking Tetsuo with his own arm and forming buzzsaws out of the iron in his blood, and the scale of them clashing and distorting the planet's magnetic field was fucking sick.
I genuinely think the only shot I was not a fan of or thought looked a little strange was Tetsuo doing this flurry attack on Magneto, and even then, that's something Biff and I disagree on. But literally everything else was really fun. My favorite part's gotta be the trippy, out-of-world stuff with the magnetic field, or containing the Big Bang in the palm of your hand. The ending is solid too, although again didn't need numbers to convey how screwed Shima was. Should have been obvious that him matching Professor X was gonna lend him the W.
In terms of stuff I didn't like, honestly I think we might have already covered it as we've been talking. All the stuff I have left to add is that they don't really use that many of Magneto's more interesting powers, even if they do use specifically his magnetism really well in creative ways. And the Big Bang thing is yet another golden tree situation, though in this case it's more excusable since that requires its own several minute discussion. Can't just draw a red circle and call it a day for this one. And they even give it to him anyway as a benefit of the doubt kind of thing, so I think it was handled about as well as it could have been.
I'll take the character-driven stuff over fewer elemental blasts any day. I'm just really happy I got to see one of my favorite characters on the show. 9 out of 10?
Sounds about right for me, yeah.
And to show I'm not just parroting your opinions like so many people do, take a look at our rankings for the season so far. The top 3 are in the same spot, but the other is out of order. Probably will be the case going forward.
And speaking of going forward, I really can't believe I expected something as predictable as Black Adam vs. Apocalypse in this spot. Like, holy shit, how do I even talk about this? This is completely uncharted territory, with both characters being from a whole medium that Death Battle has never tackled before. There have been other recent surprises like Saitama vs. Popeye and Poe vs. Iron Fist, but even then I always knew in the back of my mind that they were at least possible. Here I could have never seen Son Wukong vs. Heracles coming. You could have given me a whole ass day to come up with over 1,000 possible matches, and this would never have even crossed my mind.
It's as if Ben heard all the complaints of everyone saying this season wasn't living up to the idea of stuff being really bold and unique, told us to quiet down for 2 seconds, give us his time, and busted out a megaphone to rupture our eardrums while screaming mythological Goku vs. Superman at the highest octave. I really like it, and this is just really unique. Please, please, please show clips of Lego Monkey Kid.
Oh yeah, I gotta watch that show, don't I? I've been meaning to. I've only seen clips of it here and there, but I'm gonna make the bold claim that, no exaggeration, it has comparable, if not better looking animation than Into the Spider-Verse.
Although I'm doubting Lego or Disney or Fate or any of that stuff will be the thesis to their debate. Probably leaning into the mythos of these characters, which is really unique for Death Battle. Probably gonna use the word unique like 50 times in your next review. Death Battle has always had folklore and mythological creatures in its blood, but focusing on it exclusively is gonna be really cool. If even more outlandish stuff happens this season, color me intrigued. Although I'm imagining this is the bar.
Remember last year when I said that I couldn't even begin to express how excited Yoda vs. Mickey made me for the potential quality of the rest of the season's episodes? Yeah, this is that, but for the matchups. I really cannot wait to see what they do with this one, and I really, really hope it does well.
This is gonna be the longest 2 weeks of my life. How many times could one reasonably watch the highlight reel in that span? Or all the other ones?
That's a good question, actually. Someone watch those on loop for 2 weeks, please, and let me know. Remember to show you're working. Oh yeah, and Nem's review as well, you gotta go check that one out once you're done here. He doesn't have a second person reviewing it with him though, I don't think. So joke's on him, he doesn't have anyone else he can make write the outro for him. He's gotta figure that shit out on his own.
Make sure to subscribe to Biffweed. Enjoy the highlight reel.
Huh, it really isn't that difficult, is it?
Woo!
Okay.
I'm gonna shit.
Let's get this shit.
That was a Darth Vader reference. I'm not sure if anyone caught that. That was a Darth Vader versus Magneto reference.
My favorite DBX.
They might get demonetized for that shit, actually.
Hope not.
I'm not sure if you're allowed to have Nazi imagery in your episodes. At least without it being censored. I'm not sure. Visually.
I'm glad he disliked
guess so.
wooden guns. Let's go. Yeah.
Dislikes Nazis.
I'm glad. I
Whoa,
hope.
he dislikes Nazis? Whoa, whoa.
Why are you upset? Why are you upset about that?
Why did he dislike them?
Politics in my death battle?
No.
Oh, they had to make it political. They had to make it political.
Wait, what the fuck are you talking about?
Oh, the Red Mist fan.
Perhaps if I pull you from this revel.
Oh, maybe if I pull you out from under this crap, the spell will break. Oh no!
I'm just
Don't do the
spitballing
hand
it. If there's a
thing, do the hand
50-50%
Yeah.
chance of success if I pull you out of this level.
Yeah, he's not certain, but it might work.
I'm gonna have defenses against green and blue smoke, so we should be fine. Oh,
Oh shit!
red smoke!
No!
I should pay attention.
It's all over.
But I've seen
Yeah.
this preview like a bunch of times.
Like that face. Oh, I like that face as well.
I love Magneto faces.
Wait, did Dummy's voice change?
I don't think so.
Doesn't seem like it.
Sounded a little
Different filters.
Baldy!
He defeated the apocalypse.
But no, it's a history lesson. Oh.
Oh, Context, I hate it.
Yeah, it's not like we need context for the X-Men. Tetsuo,
Go on, Tetsuo.
It's okay. Tetsuo, if I know my boy Tetsuo, he's got a trick or two up his sleeve.
Yeah, he's got a big forehead. Magneto's fans eat
Magneto
well.
kind of a baddie.
Don't ever say that.
Old man.
Kind of raw, to be honest.
I like that.
No hand swipe. No hand swipe with the truck. Unbelievable.
Now,
Yeah.
Tetsuo's preview is probably my favorite this season with like Homelander.
The boy.
Guy.
Friend just throwing up blood. Yeah, if any episode's gonna get demonetized, it's probably this one.
Was never satisfied with Kaneda being the leader of the pack.
What's so funny?
I can just see that.
Tetsuo.
Why'd you laugh?
Don't worry about it.
Hell yeah, child death.
Tetsuo, look out!
Only satiated by fries.
Get them fries.
Yeah, that's what he
He's
wants
got
to
fries on the other side.
No!
I hate fries. Will be fine.
Yeah.
Wow, 2 ego forms in one season.
That's what what?
With Kaneda's rebellion.
Oh, he really did erect it.
Tetsuo took a turn for the worse. He had
Okay.
Babies can be monsters.
That one was for Ducko.
I was really expecting a fucking gross gremlin whiz coming out of there.
I've actually been working on my own device to merge with the universe
Is
boomstick.
that Rick and Morty?
Yeah.
Yay!
Maybe it is a different voice actor.
Where did it go?
Give it an inflection at least.
That was a Big Bang Theory reference, I think.
Yes, it was. You are correct.
Oh, see?
That is a Big Bang reference. That's exactly what I was referencing. Was the Big
Yeah,
Bang.
you were thinking of Sheldon Lee Cooper when you wrote that.
Or Howard Wolowitz.
Especially young Sheldon.
Yeah! Let's go,
I
Tetsuo!
was so invested. You know, maybe it's actually universal. Let's go.
I would like it if Tetsuo won. He's not gonna. I would like it.
You just watch. He's got a trick up his sleeve.
I love this voice for him.
Yeah.
Damn, why Magneto got dumpy?
You didn't need to
I
say
knew
that.
you'd never say that
They're just things
again.
you just didn't need to say. You didn't need to say that.
Ooh.
Shit.
Oh my fuck!
Hey,
Oh, yo! Oh my god! Oh, that was awesome!
Yeah.
Oh fuck!
shit.
Oh god, they actually are
They
doing
actually
this.
did it!
There it is!
Fittingly, it's Wednesday, but that's fitting.
Oh.
Help me!
Oh my god!
He's gonna put him out of his misery. Is the universe gonna fucking blow up right now? Is that what's about to happen?
Oh,
Right through the forehead.
Hey, that was
that was
nice.
fucking great.
You know, I don't really like it when they have character moments like that. You know, they kind of break the pacing.
Yeah. Oh, that was pretty funny actually. That was actually a pretty good.
Yeah, that was hilarious.
People are gonna be obnoxious about you trying to pull a golden tree feet.
Say the comparison
Probably.
wasn't superfluous.
That was cool. That's a cool like piece of reasoning there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
really good.
Magneto's astonishing power
Right in his
and
forehead.
control over all things Magneto.
Second favorite? I like it more than Tanjiro versus Jonathan. But between this and Homelander Omni-Man, my favorite.
I prefer Homelander Omni-Man, but this is great.
What's next? What's next?
Alright, let's see what...
Alright, let's see what it is.
Boba Fett Star-Lord!
I'm actually very scared.
I'm so curious.
I'm curious because for the first time I don't
Boba
know.
Fett Star-Lord, come on guys.
Oh,
Hmm?
ooh!
Oh!
That's sick!
Oh, that's cool!
Yo!